Test, testing audio.
Town Board is back in session for our budget presentations. We are just after 1 o'clock, and we did not have an opportunity before our break to speak with Tom Fowler and to hear the budget presentation for the law department. We're going to do that right now for the council members. You're going to find on pages 27 and 28 of the budget prep report that there is a breakdown for the cost appropriations rather for the law department. So, Mr. Fowler, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I had handed everybody a copy of my submission. Councilmember Pilarski had sent out an email asking for copies of what it was that we submitted for this round of budget discussions. So I had made a copy of that for each of you, as well as the relevant pages from Mr. Kraus, so you guys could have those. I don't know if it's easier for you to look at it in that way or not. My budget is relatively simple. I've got two full-time and one part-time staff member in addition to myself. We have no vehicles, we don't pave, and a lot of what we do is managed by IT with respect to computers and electronics and phones and whatnot. So I don't have any of that built in. Pardon me. Largely it's payroll. There are some costs in there that are associated specific to my department. I can tell you that when I've only been here a little bit, as you all know, but when I did come on, I managed to put a significant amount of furniture in the office at no cost to the town. And we are cutting back on some of our subscriptions and things that are readily available on the internet at very little to no cost. That has been an amazing tool as far as legal research and our ability to find and draft forms and communicate with other attorneys. So you're not going to see a whole lot of increases here. There are two primary areas of increase. One is payroll, of course, and most of that is standard. I have asked for an additional amount for my legal secretary, who just after a little bit of research, I have been able to find out that in relation to both smaller and bigger towns is significantly underpaid, comparatively speaking. And for the work that she does as a full-timer and for the length of time she's been here, she is one of the lowest full-time in a professional position in our town. So I have asked that she get approximately, I believe it was $2,000 extra, bringing her up to $24 an hour in addition to her annual contractual increase. And I do know when I say contractual increase, it is. However, she is a discretionary exempt employee and doesn't have union protections and is not necessarily involved in the union as a discretionary exempt employee, an exempt appointment to my office. Same thing with my municipal administrative assistant, though in discussions with him, he is happy and comfortable. Everybody would like more, but he understands I didn't go to bat for everyone in my office. Just whatever is contractually already in the works, and that information came from Mr. Kraus. The other area you'll see, and it's an inflated figure looking backwards, is outside counsel for contracted legal services. The asylum issues that arose and some of our outside counsel issues seem to have taken the budget in a place it wasn't intended to go. I don't think that was foreseen. We are doing everything we can. There are a couple small things that I've kept in-house that have traditionally gone to outside counsel, not for significant amounts of money, but baby steps in bringing these things back in-house. Anticipating perhaps some of your questions, and I recall during my interview, there was a discussion about not trying to change things whole scale immediately, seeing where we were, seeing what we needed, and seeing what we could do in-house. We've got somewhere between 20 and 30 open cases with outside counsel at any point in time. As you know, we're self-insured. We don't have a carrier that assigns defenses to us, and we do that on our own. And that comes out of my budget as a general rule. The time that these firms put in and the expertise that they provide to us is both significant and probably unequaled with respect to an appointed municipal attorney. It would be impossible for any one person to handle each and every one of these files, as diverse as they are. So I'm not asking for the $200,000 that it looks like perhaps may have gotten spent in the past, but working across the line, I did ask for an increase. And in looking at what is the recommended stage, I feel very comfortable that we can make that 140,000 work. This is my first time doing budget with the town of Cheektowaga, and perhaps my eyes were bigger than my stomach on the 160. And I don't disagree that that may have been inflated. I had originally asked for a little bit less than that, and in discussions with Mr. Kraus, and mind you, I got my budget in late. Perhaps didn't pay attention to the timelines as quickly as I should, and he had to do some of this without benefit of my input until after the fact. So I'm very comfortable with where you have me. I would appreciate if you saw it to compensate my legal secretary at a comparable rate to other professionals, both in Western New York and within the town, and would leave it open to you for questions at this point.
All right, gonna throw it over to council member questions.
All right, Tom, I'll ask the same questions. Any areas in your budget, and I think you've already answered it, that stand out as red flags? Hey, I will not be able to survive, or it's going to take a hit. And if so, any areas in your budget you think you can make a cut to transfer it to? And then any big ticket items down the line that we should keep on our radar 2 to 3 years down?
As far as that stand out that we're going to suffer if we take a hit, I do not know exactly where we are with longevity and sellback, so I won't speak to those. Office equipment at $200 were bare bones. I suspect it will spend nothing on office equipment. Office supplies, $2,000 seems about right, but we might even be a little over there. Printed briefs, it's in there because I've seen it in there in the past and thought it might be worth preserving, but I just don't see, we don't do that. Most of that type of printed brief style submission work comes from our outside counsel and is billed separately. As far as law books, I left it where it was because I don't know exactly where we're going to be, and I didn't want to have to come asking for help later. I have cut out subscriptions to a number of different things that, again, and I referenced it earlier with respect to just something as simple as Google and the internet. We canceled our subscription to all of the updated pocket parts for the 200 plus volumes of Westlaw McKinney's. It's all available online. In addition to that, we have a Westlaw subscription that my municipal assistant uses regularly, and we can access this information, this updated information on there quite simply. It's already being paid for. I just didn't see the need to keep paying for something that we honestly don't use. I don't even have those books anymore in my office. You know, the typical books that are in the back of all your attorney commercials, we don't need them. We have them online, and quite frankly, they're easier to access through word searches than they are looking through indexes and then having to get the book and find out you grabbed the wrong book. So I do believe that 4,500 in 4013, that may be by the end of the year, we might find that that's a little too much. And I would not have any problem in future budgets eliminating that or bringing it down to something more reasonable. And if that's where you find that you want to cut, I'm not concerned about that. Miscellaneous filing and legal fees, we're probably going to be close to that. It might even be a little higher because we file things with the clerk's office very regularly. We are responsible for filing deeds, things that come in and out. So that's on us. The biggest thing in travel and training, if you were to gut that, then I just wouldn't go to the trainings, which I do find beneficial. There's networking opportunities, there's training opportunities. I was lucky enough to go last year before I came here, And I think I have probably 10 to 12 or 13 different classes. All of that I thought were beneficial at the time. But again, that's up to you guys. The biggest thing I think is outside legal counsel and payroll. I do not believe in the 2 to 5 year for the third part of your question that I've heard, unless the size of the office changes or the dynamic or scope of the services we provide both to the board, to the town, and to the residents changes. I don't see that jumps dramatically. Again, we don't have equipment needs any different than anybody else in this town, and largely our equipment needs are taken care of by the IT department and Lisa Bolognese.
Else from other council members?
Yes. So the contracted legal services, that includes all of the law firms that we outsource things to, such as, one of the biggest ones, Hodgson and Ross.
That's correct.
You know how many firms are included in this?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can tell you that just doing some quick math, I could tell you that there's 7 that I'm aware of that I've had exposure with and worked with since I've gotten here. I've been told, I was told by my predecessor that there are other people involved, but I've not received any reports from some of those folks, nor have I made any referrals to them.
And if we were to get sued or have a settlement or anything like that, where would those numbers come from?
It depends on what the suit was for. Excuse me. If it's something that we have outside liability insurance for, I believe that would come through our insurance carrier, and that would be defended, if I'm not mistaken, under the terms of our policy. If it's something that we're self-insured, like a lot of the things, car accidents with town vehicles, somebody gets hurt at a playground, those funds would come out of what I believe to be an already funded insurance reserve fund.
Right, correct. It's the that risk retention reserve or funds that I was speaking of that we utilize.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any others, questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. Thank you, Tom. We're going to move on to Rick Coburn and the Part-Town Fund.
Rick Coburn, building, plumbing, planning, fire safety, neighbor preservation. I have 2 budget lines or 2 budgets for 2 departments that are kind of present here, and I'll start with to be honest with you, they're both on one set from Brian, but to lead into it, I would start with
Excuse me,
Microphone
just to let the board members know, page 152 on this budget prep report.
there we go. All right, how's that? Oh, wait. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. The budget starts primarily with what we receive in permits and typically revenues for the department. We approximately deal with 4,000 permits annually, and we typically have revenue sharing just right around maybe between $700 and $1 million on an annual basis through those permit fees. We recently just adopted to the board a new permit fee schedule that is an increase approximately about 10 to 15% of our previous schedule. So we anticipate, in some cases, as much as doubling it in larger development projects, and a little bit like maybe a 15 or 20% increase on our residential permitting fees. Our department has eliminated approximately 5, 6, or 7 in the last 7 years of required permits related to residentials. Primarily, we've eliminated roofing, windows, driveways, fences, sheds, and certain types of small little things that people can do themselves that we don't really necessarily need oversight, but it must still comply with the code. And if there's issues with that, then we get involved. So we've streamlined our requirements as far as permits that we are regulating and related to the individuals in residentials. Our intent is to expand our scope of responsibilities, and one being specifically electrical. The town has never collected electrical fees or permits for electrical, but due to my auditing in 2022 that transitioned into 2023, the state recognized that we did have oversight for inspections related to electrical, but we also had to have a permit kind of involved with it so that we can manage it, have recording of it, and have a record of all the homes that had any work done related to electrical. Before, we just had inspection reports. Part of our process as far as all projects, it was mandated and required, and we did get all those inspection reports. But what they would like to make sure that the community and the electrical contractors are understanding that we now require a permit. The majority of the permits that we have, we've included the electrical cost for our part right within that permit fee schedule. So if you pull a permit fee for a project, that would now be included. But we have got to get the mechanism to manage all that documentation related to permits and inspections. So there's another added responsibility for the department, but there is a revenue generating portion of that requirement. We go into also other fees that we actually do recoup are some contracted services that we have in our neighborhood preservation, where we will take care of homes that are deficient or in violation and they can't take care of themselves. They go through the process in the court order, and then we go and we remove all of it and we attach that to the tax bill. When I started, we had 4 RFPs for services related to the community, snow removal, debris removal, and cutting of lawn. Now we have 18 RFPs we do on an annual basis to provide services and challenges that the community is experiencing. Primarily, it could be demolitions. It could be securing an area with fencing. It could be monitoring for demolition for air quality. There's many RFPs we've actually added to our responsibility, and we put out for annual bid. So we have those available. It could be tree removals on town-owned property, BENLIC properties, or private property, because the town really can't go into those and provide those services by town staff. So we outsource that, and then that gets attached to a tax bill. So there's no cost related to the town. There is one thing I'm looking into that we can get an administrative cost for executing that order. Right now, we only get an administrative cost if the person who requires that service does not pay the responsibility. Then it gets attached to the tax bill, and then we get a $250 administrative cost added onto it after it gets put onto the tax roll, because there's multiple agencies that are involved with that, allocation to the tax roll. So we're trying to get a service administrative fee for every action we do related to our department having to force some sort of contracted services. So we'd like to have that part of the cost, but we're trying to find out statewide whether or not that's a legal action we could actually gain money from. Because it can't look like we're trying to generate funds for us and we're just putting people in violation. We go fix it and then we get some money. That can't be the intent for that. But there is a cost to the department. And with our normal standard violations within housing, we have between 4,000 to 5,000 annual complaints. We took care of, from my recollection, from May to November, we've roughly spent $30,000 in services for cuttings, securing the standard regular stuff. And that's annual every year. We right now only maintain 8 town properties and 12 BENLIC properties. When I first started, we had 570 plus or minus vacants townwide. We're down to less than probably 50, which is a good thing for the community, but they keep coming up and they're usually very noticeable and the public's very aware of them. So they're right on our radar and we regularly maintain them. We go out there almost every 2 weeks. We have a assessment of the existing vacant building, and then we either have an order that's related to that or we just involve with keep recording of that. So that's related to probably the only ways we actually generate fees. We do have the development review applications that when a project comes in, there's a development review cost associated with revenue generation. And we've increased our planning and development reviews from when I first started, we were probably doing 40 to 60 a year. Now we're about 100. So the challenges to the planning department and what we've done for our intake officers, and we've kind of separated and we put that workload around the department where the clerks were involved and assistant code enforcement officers were involved along with the planner and myself. helping kind of manage the development review process. That's another revenue generating source that the town or the department has. So I anticipate this year, and I have in my budget a slight increase that Brian included into our intent is really $750,000. We usually get about 800 or 900 on our old fee schedule. I'm anticipating that to be right around 1.3 to 1.5. So we're going to have a considerable source that's going to be generated through permit fee schedules just by natural because of the increase of those costs. Any questions thus far in revenue generation?
Will it be 1 point what?
About 1.4 to 1.5, and that's a conservative estimate. I just recently turned in something on the day I got back, perspective projects we've already gone through development review and are already under permit and starting was about $144 million of the work anticipated for 2025 that we're already presently started with it in 2024. In 2023 going in, we had $175 million worth of project anticipated, but the developers, through their own intent for cost of constructions and other reasons, they've kind of put stays on some of the projects. And in that sense, they really don't communicate too much with us and they don't give reasons necessarily behind why they're not moving forward with the project, but it kind of stays in like, then they'll revisit it a few months later and then it starts right back up. Consistently, that's what we've done. They've done all the lead work. They put all that money invested into that time. Sometimes the actual approvals have expired and they kind of revisit that. And that's one project we have right now on Genesee, 5030 Genesee, those 12 or 15 townhomes. It's expired. And that's something we've wanted to change within our zoning laws and certain kind of that if they don't get started right away, that it doesn't expire, that you don't have to go back through this process and start the whole thing over again.
Actually, that's something we can take on. Any questions on revenues? We're going to go into expenses.
It's just a quick question on that. Well, they're aware of these expiration dates, aren't they?
Yes, it's dated. It is definitely dated. The issues a lot of times is when you get your financing packages together and a timeline might expire and then you have to go back to your bank and your bank basically says, you know, you've lost your window of financing. So then they start the financing and interest change and things. You know, we don't really have board approvals because they didn't go to that next step. So the bank's like, you don't have the approval to do this, even though we've actually given the approvals, but they didn't pull the permit and they haven't got a permit to get started. They haven't submitted drawings yet because there's another cost related to that. So, and then all of a sudden they just have to start that process back over.
Gotcha.
And it's not uncommon. Even for permits, the zoning says if you file for the permit within a year, it still extends it. It's the filing of the permit is kind of the crux of that start and stop of when that begins.
Thank you. And I know there's a number of different sections of your budget, but what I'm asking, if you could take the next 10 minutes or so to give a quick general overview of your budget and maybe point out a couple areas where you're concerned that the funding may not be adequate. And then after that, we'll open up to the board. If there's any pressing questions after that, we'll give you just a couple minutes to finish up, okay?
Sure, absolutely. So right now, as far as expenditures, I have added a bunch of positions and titles that I would like to see upgraded along with actually established. I've been fighting this fight for almost 8 years and it started with my own self. I was assistant code enforcement officer and I became supervisory within a few weeks when it finally actually happened. I wasn't prepared, I wasn't trained, and I wasn't educated in the responsibilities of management, not just supervisory of code enforcement, but the variety of the responsibilities of the department to supply information related to the board. And that information was left with the previous supervisor, and there was nothing actually given to actually extend and bridge that conversation. So I feel that it's important, and I've heard other department heads talk about, for the sake of conversation, assistant directors, assistant in the department for the supervisory. Just recently, since I've been here 22 years, I took the 30 days off for personal reasons that I had to attend to. So I had to disconnect from the town, and it kind of created a lot of dissent, a lot of challenges, and a lot of problems within the department of management. And because there was no really somebody to actually talk to and get that information, it kind of went sideways and they were getting information from multiple parties and there was a lot of meetings to be had and it was only 30 days. I've been out on surgery 5 times with knee replacements, shoulder replacements, and ankles from actually falls from the town. So that's important to get some sort of a hierarchy of understanding within the management of the scope that we provide in 5 different departments. And I don't feel it's comfortable. And I put in hundreds of hours for the last 5 or 6 years annually, just try to be able to, because they literally say it's not within my job scope to be able to supervise, manage, train, or oversee anybody, every single person in my department. It's been brought to my attention, to my management, that I am not permitted to have this staff do those responsibilities. And I've been grieved 17 times with related issues. So I've asked for an increase, one for myself, which is a whole other separate entity of the scope of compensation that I felt that I was entitled to for the last 8 years as supervisory. I've asked for positions related to senior code enforcement officers to manage portions of the department, one to manage building, one to manage housing, one to manage fire, one to manage plumbing, and then one to manage planning. The reason is every single person that comes and assists those areas, there's nobody in the department that has the responsibility or has the authority to actually just help train staff at the entry level. So that's the reason for those positions and the request for those positions, because it kept falling back upon myself as the single person within the department. I've also asked for an increase to planning and another position for planning, which a supervisor has supported, and he's been supporting for the last 3 or 4 years. Planning is an integral part of our department's ability to go and first foremost get monies available through grants, also to provide the services needed for developers know they can expedite this process in the greatest efficiency so that a project can move forward based on certain construction schedules. If they don't meet those, it extends years. And that's the extent of where delays in projects get pushed back, or there's concerns with funding. And then the developers, if we can't fill that need, they just would rather go other municipalities and just try, because it's all money and it's all cost. And planning is the only way we're going to generate revenues to offset the tax base. New commercial developments, specifically, let's say 1111 Harlem, let's say it's a $25 million project. The building fee alone is going to be $400,000. And that's one project. And when I said 1.4 million on that whole overall the year, based on a few of the projects that I anticipate, we might be 3 or 4 projects that might get us up to $1 million based on our new fee schedules. And that's what I'm trying to basically try to evaluate the importance of providing those services and expediting those within the planning scope of our department. The neighborhood preservation and part of the enforcement with our housing stock related to that. I've asked for additional people, another staff member within housing and code enforcement, because there's 2 areas of code enforcement. One is basically housing preservation, which is property maintenance. And there's a whole nother one with zoning regulated uses and the way commercial parcels are not properly maintained, which kind of looks bad around the town, which I've gotten a lot of complaints unilaterally from across the community. Those actions take an extended period of time. One zoning enforcement action could take over a year, probably close to 40 to 50 hours minimally within a staffer just for one complaint. And because those require you to go back to court, ACDs go back to court, try to get something done, and it's a long drawn out process where what happens is we just don't continue to pursue those, and it kind of goes into limbo. And I think everybody's kind of seen some of those projects that are like that, that's what's going on. It's in court, it's sitting there, and nothing can move forward. Those are primarily the positions: senior planner, senior code enforcement officer. I did request a senior fire. Both my fire inspectors have gotten national certifications and are extensively involved with all kinds of training capabilities. Along with, we've just inherited the AED management throughout town-wide, which has been great. We've already seen successes of saving lives. And we've also gone to the Knox box with all the districts to upgrade, try to go to E-cores, where all the Knox boxes throughout the town could be electronic, and we don't actually need hard keys in order to get access to the Knox box to allow fast entry for EMS services related to showing up at buildings, whether it be a fire alarm or actually a fire. They're not waiting around for somebody to open the door. And the Knox box in the last 7 years have gone from like 12 to almost 500 or 600. So that's a great asset for all the districts throughout the town. And plus the grant funding we did get from the county that allowed them to put brand new systems within all the fire trucks townwide, which is a great asset value again. And that's my fire inspectors have taken on those roles, and they would also be considering looking over buildings and help certify existing elements within our own town's buildings as opposed to outsourcing that to a third party.
Before you go any further, I just wanted to mention, and you may know that yesterday we had covered the planning board and zoning board portions of this.
Good, okay.
We
I
already
was-
spoke to that. You
great.
don't have to speak to that at
Excellent.
all. So I'll give you, you got about 5 minutes left.
Yep, and then the last thing I would just like to preface in as far as what we're looking at, and I've talked to Tom about this, and I've actually talked in the past about outside counsel. I've been brought before the board and had to basically defend actions or procedurally things we've done within the department that were either one contradictory to the board's intentions or looked like we haven't followed proper legal paths. And we don't have a resource specifically that is geared towards civil land uses related to special use permits, related to temporary permits. And we have adopted a comprehensive plan that is now kind of encouraging different types of development that our boards are not really set up to understand because there's no guidelines within the zoning laws, that the implementation of that part has fallen away since we've adopted a comp plan in 2021. So I'd like to have some legal counsel and some leading guidance to develop an implementation plan for zoning. I would also like to have some legal counsel that we could actually refer to related to some of these challenges we have with what we're doing in letting the development community know what needs to be done. Whether we're following the right path, or at least Dan or ourselves or our department has resources. Tom's been a great resource, so we're relatively new to our relationship with him, but he also understands that I have to adopt a 1203, which is a submission into the state that's 3 years behind that I got audited for. I have to amend our local laws related to one of Rick's things about sidewalks. We have about 180, 190 sidewalk conflicts, trees, conflict sewers that are pending because we can't move forward with an action letting the community know we can assist in this matter. And he's on board with trying to do something that we will fix the sidewalk, we'll back charge you onto your tax bill, and we'll walk away and we're done with trying to cut a tree down so that you won't fix your sidewalk anyway. And it's still a problem, and then we're still fixing it after we already spent thousands of dollars removing trees that aren't necessarily required to be removed. So there's a lot of waste in that also. I've been on probably a dozen depositions related to sidewalks alone. And when there's claims against the town for people tripping on sidewalks, town-owned property. And we can go after the homeowner. It doesn't take a difference if the town's liable. And I can leave it with that. I just would like to say thank you. And if there's any questions. Oh, and one last thing about IT. Our department has about $100,000 annual cost related to IT support to our department. We have like six specific softwares that we work with ESRI, our IPS, our inspections, Wendell's management of that. And we used to have Basecamp, but now we use Rever, and now we're going into a brand new system that we're trying to acquire. And we've been through, Lisa had already addressed that yesterday, that we're under last steps to this to adopt basically the type of system that we're trying to get where the public's access to it. There's real-time information, complaints could come in, and it's done through cloud storage. So we're not using our servers anymore. And it should really open up much better expedition. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention, we're doing probably close to 500 foils annually. And then that's not even zoning compliance centers. We're probably 300 to 400 of those. That's almost a full-time clerk job that I've actually separated between 3 different staffers to help assist in dividing zoning compliance centers and just foils alone. And one foil could be almost 600 pages. So many people says we need to know all the building permits for the Galleria Mall. And it happens regularly when we're talking about refinancing or a plaza or some of those parcels that it takes. And again, they're not producing this. They just have to go through and research that much documentation. Hopefully the system that we're trying to incorporate in will help us facilitate faster information, or the public themselves can access all of our records. That's where we're hoping when we do all the migrations. Hopefully that's a success, and we can have the public, there it is for you to looking at anytime you want it.
I think it's a great place to finish up. I know there's a lot more that could be covered here. I would encourage board members, if there's questions we can't get to today, to reach out to Rick directly to get some answers. I know if I do, it's one of those things, let's put the whole town board on the email, because one of us may have a question that others do. And if we ask it, that saves Rick time in answering twice and all that kind of thing. So, because there's a lot involved here. I'm glad you mentioned FOIL too, because we talked about that yesterday with a couple folks, and it's impacting multiple departments. It's the nature of things these days. So we have to make sure we have adequate resources to take care of what's going on in Rick's departments along with police and IT and records in the clerk's office. Um, on the revenue side, I know we were talking about what you're expecting to see in 2025. And I know that there's a forecast of revenue here of about 750,000. From your vantage point, and to a certain extent mine too, maybe you agree it's a very conservative estimate of the revenues, a very low estimate compared to what's possible. And I think that's a good idea to go this route. Let's just see what happens, you know? And we've had conversations about some of the things I want to see. I'm glad we have a senior planner funded in this budget for the senior title there. We have a one-person planning department, and when we talk about making the town more affordable for people, one of the ways you do it, you basically got 3 ways to deal with that. You can cut spending, you cut the spending, or grow your way out of it. Think about 2 basic ways. What you have available to you is a very important way to go about this. Projects like 1111 Harlem and all of that. We've got to get real serious about redevelopment. The comp plan helps us out with that. Along with the comp plan, I've talked to some folks already about townwide rezoning, and we won't have to, if we do that in a proper way, that'll make things a little easier in terms of development projects and would provide more consistency. There's grant funding out there for that, but we might be able to use some of these extra revenues to supplement the grant to do a townwide rezoning. It's been a very long time since that's been done. And the zoning can go along with the intentions of the comp plan. I've talked with the town planner about the pro-housing communities, and we've gotten data together and about how we can approach something like that. That would free up grant money too for downtown revitalization. Doing things on Walden Avenue to improve facades and improve those properties in other areas of town too, that growing the values of those properties and taking some of the pressure off of the residential side. One of the
Agreed.
other things that it's not necessarily budget related, but we're looking into a homestead, non-homestead tax option if we're talking about affordability. I've had conversations with a few board members. There's some differences of opinion on that. That's a way too that we could take some pressure off of residential taxes. But there is a lot of work to do to grow the assessed value of the town, especially on the commercial side, supporting things that are going on with residential properties. There's one project in particular that was revived after 30 years, and it's good that we have the staff we need to help administer those things. What you do is critical, and I've told you this multiple times privately before, that if we're going to grow the tax base and set the town up in a good way for the future, it really starts with your department. It starts with planning, and it starts with where we're going to be in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years. So Brian has questions for each of the department heads, and I'm really curious for your 2 to 5 year plan, and would ask that you stretch that out. Where should we be in 10 years in your view? So I've said my piece.
On that note, I've got 3 questions that I've asked every department head, and then I've got one pertaining directly to your department. Question 1, where in the proposed budget do you think that there is any red flag areas like, hey, this is really low, it's concerning, and maybe there's nowhere. Maybe you're happy with everything that's proposed here and can work with it, but I think I've heard throughout saying, hey, these are some key areas, I need this and that. But what is like a major area you're like, this is really low and I'm gonna have a very difficult time conducting business? And then where can you get funding within your budget that's proposed, if anywhere, to say, hey, maybe we can plug a couple, a little bit there and push it over and redirect it?
So there's 2 things I would agree. One is the first red flag I'm going to have that I wanted to address are my contracted services. Like I said, we started with 4 RFPs. We have now 17. The RFPs are relative to some costs that we associate and we put onto the tax roll, but we still have to have the funding within the budget to basically pay the contractor, and then it gets transferred in. And we don't know what that might be, like fencing around a burned building. So we have to have that done. There's no waiting on it. I want to execute it the evening that we know so that it's secured the following day. Contracted services have been increasing every single year since we've added more RFP. So I think that's something we want to make sure there's a funding line in there that we will get reimbursed, but it doesn't leave me enough room, because I just recently had to do a transfer of $7,000 out of my miscellaneous funds into my contracted services to cover the remainder of the year that we had that. And my administrative clerk's been working with the finance director and his staff How do we find the budget lines for that? But that was one line I think that we really want to focus in on, that make sure that's thoroughly established, because we know what we anticipate. And right now, I haven't gotten into snow removals and shoveling of walks. That contract, you never know what that might look like. And sometimes it's a very urgent kind of call out, and we don't know. But when it's a critical yard or it's really impacting extra school, we want to get right on it. We want to contract out there. We get the notification and we can clean it up. Now, people say with the snow leaves, you really can't weigh how fast that may or may not go. So that's one reason the contracted services are never very clearly understood. It's like reserves, but I know we're already exceeding this on a regular basis annually. So that's one I would think. Right now we're 15,000. We've already spent 20. I transferred 7, and we're going to stop cutting grass probably within the next week or 2. But then it transitions to the different types of cleanups that people start leaving crap on their lawns and trees and leaves and stuff. Sometimes it just comes exposed, or people are cleaning. We have to still have that funding available for that. I think what the supervisor mentioned is that only putting in $750,000 as far as what we anticipate permit revenue generation, there's going to be a lot of funds that are still residual in that. Going from the last 10 years, from 14 to right to 16, the department itself, based on the cost and everything, we've saved $3.6 million from my budget on an annual, for basically that term from that thing. We probably saved $200,000 to $300,000 based on revenue generation through permits and allocations of funds and actually expenditures. So I've shown that in a 10-year kind of window that's how much our department has had within our budget, and we've actually saved based on how much revenues we've actually generated. So I think some funding could be available in that kind of area. And the one I don't have any control over, and we've had many conversations, is my vehicles for the department. When we got the CEC grant, we got the allocation of the 8 vehicles. Those vehicles were basically supposed to be earmarked for my department alone. They were dispersed across the town, and they weren't used to the best proficiency. The intent for that was, over the 3-year period of those lease agreements, the money that's supposed to be allocated for those funds for those cars should have been put in a pool to sustain that whole program indefinitely. The part of that electric car is that all the services related to them would be part of the warranty related to the lease agreement. So there'd be no impact on the central garage whatsoever related to those vehicles. So sustainability to save money on the impact of the central garage, the gas itself. One of the gentlemen had an average of 570 miles per gallon because he never used his gas. He used electric every day. And our timeline, you really don't need gas. We said, no, you got to use your gas. You can't leave it in it for 3 months. So there was a transition to that. But so that was kind of earmarked, but right now I know we're kind of having a lease that's expiring right as we speak in this time frame. And I'm not really involved with the negotiation or conversations related to those vehicles or where we might be going with those vehicles.
So would you
Real
say then,
real quickly on that, for the board's understanding, there is money in the central garage budget to deal with the pool cars and the
Excellent.
leasing situation. It doesn't deal with the pickup trucks, the 2 that are in facilities and the 2 that are in sewer. But there is money in that section of the budget for it.
so would you say the vehicles, or is there something different that the board should keep on their radar for 2 to 5 years right now as big ticket items that you're going to need? I mean, obviously the budget presented a lot of cars and vehicles are needed throughout town and equipment, but something 2 to 5 years now to project, say, hey, keep this on your radar. It's either aged out, it's decommissioned, it's broken now, or we just don't have it and need it like yesterday.
Well, we have 2 trucks that are well over 150,000 miles. They're over 10 years old, that we've gotten passed down through departments. I'd really like to try to get a couple vehicles that are established indefinitely that we have, like a fire safety vehicle that is outfitted for both of those guys that are very geared for specifically what they do. AED service, Knox box service, along with other elements they are as far as first responders related to their responsibilities in the evening when they go to a job site and there's a fire. They have to stay and be there. There's no lighting in vehicles that we have that lets them know there's still somebody on site that is part of this whole control of the site. So I've asked for that vehicles for the fire guys indefinitely for the last 7 or 8 years, that it makes sense to have one that goes on for 20 years or 30 years, that we're not trying to repurpose older vehicles specifically for that group. And then outside of that, I think the comprehensive plan and council services that we really want to incorporate and get set up so that we're good to go can't wait in some respect. I mean, because we're losing or we're having challenges that we're just not being able to facilitate, having that not knowing. And even ourselves are challenged if even these are types of projects that the town might want to see. The comprehensive plan reflects one thing, but the outcome of the results of the board anticipating or approving certain types of projects, I want to make it clear that the board is very in support of almost everything that I bring to the board. That every board is going to unanimously say that's exactly what we want to see in the town. And that's what I'm hoping to kind of accomplish.
And I've got one last question pertaining to the operations of your department. And I by no means know the daily operations, you know, in and out. But are there areas in your department that we can do have a little more efficiency to? So for example, the inspections, you know, an inspector goes out, sees a property. From my understanding, they write up the property, come back to the office, go back to the property, pin it on the door, tape it onto the door, go back to the office, then have to mail out, because these are all requirements. Hey, you got to put one on the door and also mail out. Is there ways where we can do it similar? I mean, you're issued a ticket from the police right on the spot with the thermal printers. Can we have thermal printers in their car? It's printed right there. It's issued on the door. They now print a second copy in their car, stuff it in the envelope, and then they're stopping by the clerk's office for a mass mailing at the end of the day, rather than these 6 trips back and forth and sometimes visiting a property 3 times in one day. The initial inspection, the posting, and then the mail.
So I will definitely say Brian's been in my committee and been in my department and understands that process. It's actually 22 steps. The cost of $375 per violation and posting. That's what it takes. If you go with the whole thing, exactly what you described, how many times it takes, it does. There's certain state guidelines of what we have to do. But I would agree with you. There's equipment and there's processes, and our new program should be able to facilitate what we need. Now, it's the printers in the car. It's going to have to be talked to IT as far as that infrastructure, but investment into that completely makes sense based on the cost of services related to the officers and the timeline takes to actually execute the violation order and the posting. And they do have to do that, and they're regularly doing that. They'll come out and do 3 or 4 in the morning, come back and do it, and then potentially have to go back and repost because the pictures come in, they document, they have to have that part of the process when it goes into court, and there we are. And I would like to sit down and find out through council, again, what can we do legally? How will we incorporate that into our process and then get the equipment or infrastructure that would help support that? I'm totally in agreement with that. And it's something that everybody who sits in our department, this doesn't even seem to make sense. The time it takes to kind of execute those processes is challenging and it's costly.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, the fuel and the wear and tear on vehicles, multiple trips, in addition to the amount of properties we could be addressing if they would just go on. I mean, right now, let's be serious. We're reactive in regards to, you know, calls coming in saying, hey, there's a violation. But our inspectors could literally go down streets if they had the time. We just don't have the amount of inspectors to do that. So they're reactive to calls coming in instead of proactive to just kind of go through and start spitting out, you know, violations. Not that we want to go out and put violations out to everybody, but it'll be a little bit better if we're proactive on it, and we're saving time and money. You know, the two go hand in hand if we could just do it all one stop instead of multiple.
Notifications are great. Communication's great. I appreciate that. And that's what I'm saying. Even if we immediately see something, we can put a notification on their door. And just by the way, we're here, we're letting you know, contact our office. This is what you must do. And then even before we even issued a violation, is information that they're needed to be aware of to let them know there could be potentially violations and follow up procedures on that. So it would help tremendously if they could do that. If they could print something. They do have some, but we don't have enough bullet kind of. We have to have it earmarked and written in as far as specifically what we're trying to accomplish. It can't be a blanket thing that they're going to try to figure out. It could be any one of these 30 things you're in violation for. They want to be specific. They want to know what they need to do to remedy and be able to communicate with how they can take care of that.
So going back to something I mentioned before, we're working to make the town more affordable for people. There's basically 3 things we can do. It's cutting spending. We've talked a lot about, that's the purpose of these meetings. Generally, there are areas that we can cut. And over the course of these 2 days, we've heard a lot about departmental requests to increase and not so much proposed board cuts at this point. The other area is grants that, you know, if we get more grant money from the states or the county or the federal government, that helps sustain the town financially, where less of that has to go to fees or the tax levy. But those are not stable and dependable. It's just there's some of them are one-offs and you never get them again. The other area, and this is unique to your department, is working to grow our way out of the problem. And no single one of these things are going to be a silver bullet, because you got union contracts that lock in 70 cents on the dollar of our spending. So it's hard to it's hard to do objective cuts on the budget overall when you have that in contracts, but there are some areas you can cut. There are grants coming in, but this budget and what does it do to help us get into a position to grow our assessed value, grow commercial valuations, redevelop properties? What does it already do, and what can it do if we're willing to rework things?
A perfect example is Emerald Garden was a subdivision, is probably our, let's say for this highest valued subdivision in the community. And it's been going on since 1996.
Mhm.
And right now Morano's trying to purchase the remainder of that whole parcel and put in 40 more new homes. The developer who has previously started it is on his last leg. He's trying his way out. He's trying to get rid of it and give them rental. 40 homes at $500,000. You can obviously do the math of what the permit intake would be but that's also approximately $10,000 per home in tax revenues. So multiply 40 by 10,000 on an annual basis. Just that alone brings back that generation, along with those homes start establishing, there's a desire there. There's a want and desire to have those types of homes. We don't have that home stock in Cheektowaga. We don't have $500,000 to $750,000 homes in a subdivision. Not that there's a lot of demand for that, but that is the last one that we have that's already presently under construction. Now it's expediting that and providing the service we needed in our planning department to help move that along so that can get going and put the roads in and continue on with that one. That's just one project.
Those are in the central school district, I'm pretty sure. So
is.
just as a case and, just a point of information there. Yeah, the tax bills were probably gonna be around $10,000. When you look at how a tax bill's broken down, roughly half of that goes to the school district and then the other half goes to town and county. And on that town and county, you got the county taking their share, the fire district taking their share, sewer districts. You're probably looking at 1 in 5 of those dollars actually going to the town fund. So the total number, you're right on. It's just to make the board understands that you might
Not a
have
lot.
somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 per home every year coming to the board from new properties. It doesn't do a lot in the larger scheme of things, but is one of those things that help, offset.
I would like to know how the basically the market rate apartments generates funds related to taxes. And I know they're taxed, but they're taxed differently than homes. I'd like to know the value of the density of those values related to home values of what the town should look at as far as promoting our last vacant parcels, whether it be William or Transit. We don't have many left. But when we do, we'd like to be in a position to actually look at a fiscal benefit to the community and the town when we're making decisions related to what that development should look like before we even rezone it. Because almost every single parcel needs to be rezoned in order to build on it under our present zoning guidelines, whether it be mixed use housing for percentage purposes, or whether it's just transitioning into RA apartments that we don't necessarily have throughout the town. So those are the things in the implementation for zoning to specifically know that we're going to earmark these types of areas to develop these types of projects that are going to return this type of investment. And developers love that. Once you start laying it out what the intention, they'll show up and they'll build. But they don't want to try to figure out can we rezone it? Is the town in favor of rezoning it? And there's the challenge where most developers just aren't willing to pick up that responsibility because it takes months and months to get to the point where, okay, we're going to rezone it. And then we start the development part of it. So I think the implementation to help really kind of guideline all approval boards, planning, zoning, EAC, CCAC, they have better guides to what they're trying to tell everybody that comes before them. And that will help generate funding that we really could use, like a $350 million or 350 unit apartment on McKesson Drive. That was a $53 million project. Start doing the math of what that looks like on 4 acres. I mean, yes, there's a density there, but people would love to live right where they work, kind of thing.
Understood. Any other council member questions, comments, concerns? All right, with that, thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Happy Friday.
Thanks.
See you again next week.
Yep.
We're leaving one Rick, we're picking up another Rick. You are our last presenter. Now we're getting into the highway department primarily, but there are a couple other minor budgets that Rick oversees that we will go over. So, good afternoon, Mr. Rujniak. How are you?
Hello.
The highway budget is 119 to 125 in the budget prep report. Think we're all set?
Hey, where would you like me to start?
Oh, it's a great question. We're gonna start off, we discussed yesterday. We talked a little bit about employee benefits that are within the budget, some of those fixed costs. We got into labor costs generally associated with contracts, but not the specific number of positions. So, there's a lot to cover. Why don't you start with the labor cost of your department?
Okay, labor costs, that is probably the biggest part of our budget, is our labor. I don't know, Brian has a total number.
Let me just, direct the board members to, probably the best place to look at labor. So in the highway fund, page 122, has a centralized cost of payroll. And what happens is that actually then gets allocated amongst the highway fund, but this is where all of the costs of payroll are shown for you to see.
Dollar amount, we're looking at just over $4 million.
Plus bennies, plus. Okay. Operational wise, we run about a $14 million operation. Another 6 million in capital projects. And then now we are involved in a $13 million lighting project. So for what I oversee is quite the dollar amount to keep this in check, watch the numbers and keep it rolling and try to stay to our budget. I mean, you look at what I put in for highway superintendent. The rate hasn't changed since 2015. It's been the same. The average highway superintendent, our town, our size, Erie counties, 120 to 130. The deputy we had was 91,400, which that has been taken away. The secretary to the superintendent was 44,000, which was taken away. When I ran for this position, I looked at the rate that the highway superintendent was getting. And after I took over, it was drastically reduced. But it's my job. I took the job, I took the position, and we are doing what we have to do to make it happen. That's why this request is in here for the pay end of it. If you want to get back into the shop, into the repair and maintenance of our place, we got $100,000 in there.
Excuse me one more time. I know this can be confusing, so board members as well. I mean, what the highway superintendent has been talking about, that in municipal budgets, so the highway fund has all the expenses and revenues related specifically to the maintenance and repair and upkeep of highways exclusively. When it comes to the buildings and actually the highway superintendent and administrative type function, that is actually recorded in the general fund. And so that cost is on page it's on page 55, of that. So I know it's confusing. I'm trying to be upfront so you guys see it all. But this is just how accounting wise per state rules that they're recorded. So what Rick's talking about is, was his salary. We did actually move the administrative people that had previously been in the highway fund. We moved them into the general fund because that's really the correct way that should have been done. It was kind of an oversight for years. So we moved the 2 clerical people into this line as well. And then also the highway garage maintenance and repairs and different costs operating to that building is also on the next page.
Yeah, the garage part that we maintain to keep our trucks warm for the winter. Our back garage is very aged. The heaters in it are tired. National Fuel came in this year. We had leaks. They shut down the whole operation because of that back garage. So we had to plug it off. We had our electrician come in and brought one of the plumbers in. We disconnected the back garage because of the problem with the heaters. That was just so we could keep heat up front. That was done, early spring or in the early spring. So we were able to keep things going. But we need to keep these trucks warm. They're diesels. They have to have some heat in them. We take and preload these trucks at night to save time in the morning before traffic gets out there. We're out there putting salt out. We are ready to go in the evening. So the next morning, when weatherman says, or you stick your head out the window, we got ice. We try to be proactive and getting our service out there because our job is public safety. And that's our number one job. So in order to do that, we've got to put a lot of money into this heating system. So we put some money into this to get this done this year. I mean, we started out in 2015, we had a $30,000 budget for that. And now in 2020, it was down to 23,000. We're going backwards on funding and we're working with less. Okay, like general expenses, like our stone aggregates, like these numbers are not going down. We're running the same numbers here for materials that increased, like our blacktop increased 17 to 19%. Depends on what it is. Our crushed stone increased 25% to 37%. Our pipe, our HDP, 38% to 41%, plus another 13% going up this year. That's just what it went up. Sanitary pipe, that's up 67%. That's the SD35. Precast catch basins are up 28%. Manholes up 35% to 60%. Topsoil per cubic yard is up 37%. We're paying $26.42 a yard. Private sector, you're looking at 35 to 40. So we are getting a good price for our materials. We shop it. We do the best we can. So we're not asking for more. We're doing what we have. We're trying to make cuts. We're trying to save the town money. We're changing processes, how we do things to keep these roads repaired. We're back into the crack seal business, trying to get longevity out of these roads. But the infrastructure is the infrastructure. The drainage, it's dated. That's why we're running these projects, these capital projects. If we stop, we're going to get into the point of collapsing roads, which you already have. We're getting sinkhole complaints. That's the old galvanized material that's rotting and the roads are dropping. The stuff we're putting in the ground, it's 100-year material. This stuff's going to last a long time. I know this project seems like it's been running out a long ways, and it is, but we have 400 lane miles in this town. I mean, our infrastructure is probably $400 million. That's what we're taking care of, right? We got a $400 million infrastructure in this town. It's a formula we looked at through the Highway Superintendent's Association. They have the numbers. So what we do is what it takes to maintain this town at a quality that this town deserves. So these are the numbers. And we get into these, like the capital improvement projects, the bonding average is 2.25. If we didn't have that running, we wouldn't be able to even keep these numbers going. We'd be out of money, out of projects by June, the way we do this. This bonding backfeeds and supplements the cost of these. So That's why we're not raising them, because of the way we had it set up with the capital projects. So now we get into highway equipment. I mean, back in 2015, we had a budget of 730,000. Then it started coming down, 570, 500, 4.25, 325 we're down to. So it's down like 33% already. We're sitting here with no money to buy trucks. I'm sitting on 16 Sterlings that are 20+ years old. They don't make parts for them anymore. There's a few items out there that are new that we can get, but a lot of it right now, we're pulling out of used parts yards. And it's a little scary going into this winter, knowing we don't have any trucks to back us up. We will do everything we can to keep these trucks together. We retired one already this year. It was just beyond repair. So that's a parts truck. We're not scrapping it. We're going to use it for parts. But this is what it's taken. And it isn't just the highway trucks. The rest of our equipment is aging. You know, our leaf blower or leaf suckers, our stump grinders, our chippers. Mother Nature's relentless. You know, it is, things wear out and we use them. We are a big town and we're a very busy town. And there's a, you know, like the tree requests that we have that we're trying to get around with the sidewalk. I talked with Rachel. We're trying to get some bonding to be able to handle some of this, where we can do that program again, the 60/40, and be able to handle this without putting the burden on the taxpayer. So there's just a multitude of places that we've got to work. Our repair parts, because of what we are doing, trying to keep these trucks running, we added money for repairs. We don't have a choice. This stuff has to run, and it takes money to do it. Same with parts. Everything's up 20, 30%. And you know, it just, you got to have money to work with. You know, and like even the truck costs, they're up 40%. The big thing is, if we did bonding to get these trucks, what we save in the upcharge of what these trucks are going to cost in the future, I would say our bonding is for free. It pays the interest for what we're going to save. So it's either, you know, spend it now or pay more later. That's where we're going to be at. Our biggest problem is funding equipment. We put some money in for some shade trees. You know, our big thing is global warming. We have hundreds and hundreds of requests for trees that were taken out. They'd like replacements. We haven't been able to touch that without money in the budget. So we have a few dollars in here this year. Okay, and then we're actually down two full-timers. We're down 2 part-timers, 6 seasonal people, and that doesn't include the engineering job we lost in 2010. The seasonals were important because this was a way of venting employees where we can pull quality people into this organization to get a better quality out of them. And this is a good way to vent people. The salt. We cut our budget $100,000 on the salt, which that money, you know, funnels back down. You know, it covers the topsoil, the trees, parts and supplies for the increases. This is a place where we thought we could save and use the money elsewhere. Saltings, you know, we had a little reserve. So we looked at weather conditions, what's going on, and we thought we could make some cuts there. And there's kind of 2 lines on the stone and the pipe for some reason, but those are just the same numbers. Tried not to raise nothing, but the same thing, costs are going up. And we got creek maintenance. We got 25 miles of creeks to maintain. We got a $4,000 budget for that. I walked with the DEC, the Army Corps of Engineers, and they are on us about getting this done right, clearing these right-of-ways, making sure it's clear for floods. And we spend way more money than $4,000 keeping this going. And there's another spot where we need equipment, specialized equipment to get in these ditches. I mean, you get to the point where we don't do it, the fines will be 10 times the budget. You know, this is things we just have to get done. Any questions?
Open it up to the board.
I actually have a finance question to Brian on this. When I see on page 55 where it's showing a 159.44% increase, that is reflected because it shows 100% decrease, I'm assuming.
That the senior clerks that you're talking about?
Yeah, so page 55, it jumps out and says 159.4% increase for payroll. But if you look in that, it's the senior clerk typist and the senior clerk and all that. But then if you look on page 121, it shows 100% decrease because clerical, highway, miscellaneous. I'm assuming that's because they were shifted to a different budget line?
That's exactly correct. Jeff.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure on that. And then for you, Rick, same questions I've been asking every department is where in your budget is there red flags that go off, say, hey, we are really going to get hurt if this isn't funded appropriately, you know, based off of the supervisor's recommended budget, and where in your budget is there where you can possibly say, okay, we can pull from this area to put into that area if there was no other funding. And then my last piece of it is 2 to 5 years down the road here, what should we have on our radar? I mean, obviously I know some of the items we've been talking about for months now, 8 months now. It's plows. You know, we definitely need plows. Is there anything else or is plows it that we should keep on our radar saying these are big ticket items, start planning now or we're going to fail later?
Yeah, that's where it goes back to the bonding. If we can get through a bond to cover us, like a $3 million bond, spread this out over 3 years to get some decent equipment to get caught up a little bit, and then try to maintain a budget line in there for equipment, you know, so we can do a 15-year turnaround on our stuff, on our trucks. You know, 15 years, plow trucks take a beating in the winter. It's a lot on the truck. It's a lot on the transmission, the rear ends, the plows. The plows have wear parts. It's a constant money sucking item. Okay. It just eats money. There's no ifs, ands, about around it. Labor's the labor, the truck's the truck. It's got to be maintained. The more we drive them, the longer we keep them, the more expensive they are. If we can move them a little earlier, stay with a higher quality piece of equipment, we have less breakdowns, we have less cost on the other end of it. And it's not just trucks. Now we can remember, we got sweepers. We got 3 sweepers out there. They're getting tired. We're looking at right now trying to buy a piece of equipment for one of the loaders for doing our milling jobs, a sweeper that picks up the material. It'll be, you're talking a $28,000 piece versus a $200,000 piece. So the sweepers we have are designed and made for cleaning the streets. We use them for milling and picking up the millings. You know, it wears them quicker. There's a lot of wear parts in them. And it's just something we want to just get away from that. It's not like the old adage, we've been doing this for 30 years. Well, it's time to change. There's new technology out there, new equipment out there. Next week, we got an equipment show I want to take some guys to. I think it's very important to bring these guys out and see what else is out there. It's stuff that can save us money in the long run. We are looking down the road, that 5-year, and that's where what you got to have on the radar is the equipment and trucks, because it was depleted in the past 5 years. It has been defunded. Our stockpiles are low. We don't have enough reserves to do what we have to do. So we got to come up with a way to look into the future and say, how do we want to run this town? What kind of quality of life do we want to put out for our residents? What kind of quality of roads do we want for our residents? These are the things we got to put on the radar.
Other council member questions? Yeah, okay, yeah, I just, more point of information and then I'll throw it over to you. When you look through the total decline or the decrease in full-time laborers in the town since 2007, the numbers from around 471, we're down around 446 in this budget, I think, third page in. Yeah, 446. So that's a decrease of 25 jobs. And where do those job decreases come from? Half of them come from the highway department. There are 11 fewer full-time positions in the highway department now compared to 2007. So I know you've not been around too long as the highway superintendent. You did have a couple years as a councilman, and then, you know, also getting the time this year to hear from your foreman and laborers in the highway department. You've probably heard a little bit about the impact on services that has had. So when you used to have around 70 folks or a little over 70 folks, and now you're getting closer to 60, again, 11 positions down. What does that mean in terms of things like leaf pickup, snow removal, salting, even the work you're doing on the roads through the course of the summer? Because that's just full-time spots. We can get into the part-time positions that have been decreased as well. So
I mean, a big thing, like right now it's paving season. And to be able to handle the paving that we do and put the quality out we do, it requires people. Big thing is safety, flagmen. There's extra people got to be on these jobs. So we eat up a lot of employees when we're paving. From cleanup, you know, from the beginning to the end of the job. So then we shut down the brush pickup. We pull guys off of that. I don't have enough to replace these guys with, which would be really nice. I mean, we are starting our own training program right now for drivers. We're trying to bring drivers from the inside up. These youngins that we have in there, they got the itch and they want to learn, which is good. And that's what we want to see. We want to give them that opportunity to make something out of themselves and improve themselves. This way, when we bring up the laborers coming up through, they see these guys growing into jobs. And we're losing some great operators. We got retirements coming up. We have to replace them. So we're setting up in the back. We're going to take pieces of equipment out and get all these young kids to learn. You know, we'll take them out there like during leaf season. I'll have a couple extra days, a little time. I can take them out and we can do some training. We're going to do the CDL training. It was costing these kids $6,000 to $7,000 to get a license. We put a program together. I'm working with Lancaster, Depew, the Village of Depew, and ourselves, and we put a program together. It's going to cost these kids approximately $450 to get a license. And the deal we're going to try to do here is something we have to talk about, is if they get 2 chances at passing a road test. If they make it, we reimburse them for doing it. So we'll be able to do in-house training. One of our new employees coming in he was a teacher at Stevens Driving School, tractor trailer. Perfect timing for him to come in. So as soon as his feet land on the ground here, we're going to get this program started. So, but that's a big thing on our labor issues. We pull from other parts of the wheel that we have. You know, when everybody's fitting the wheel, it's a smooth running operation until we have to take and jump on some, or an emergency, like emergency in the wintertime, you know, everybody gets pulled off. We are all hands on, everybody's out. This year, we're going to have a second shift, which will keep our costs down a little bit, because then we have guys that are going to be here, you know, when we need them. You know, things are taken care of at night, getting things ready for the morning. And it's just a better operation. It's safer for the community and it's better for our employees. We're not taxing them. We're not working them 12, 14, 16 hours a day, burning them out. And then they're useless. You take a guy and burn them out, you're done. He's gone for a day. You lose him for a day. If we plan it and do it properly, there's going to be overtime involved. But at that time, it's a maximum of 12 hours. We're not killing the guys.
Question, what was the reason for the loss of the jobs in highway? Because you mentioned like 10, they've lost 10 over the,
I mean, even
Oh,
just from,
this was a big number back in the
Yeah.
day.
if you go back to '07, you just look through and you just going year for year, you had 73 in 2007, and then there was a change to 72 in 2009. Part of this is attrition, part of this is eliminating jobs like that, like the engineer that used to be in highway. You're down to 69 in 2013, 66 and right around the 67, right around the time I got on the board. And we've been funding 66 to 67 for several years. We're at 62 this year. So, one of the jobs being eliminated was the deputy highway superintendent among that. And then, certain laborers positions have gone out. I think we eliminated a second tree trimmer position this year. That may have been the case because we haven't had it filled. So that would be one particular
And
position
we're,
along with
we
that.
are behind on tree trimming. I mean, just on the last paving job alone, it was hard just to roll the street. The operators were hitting their heads on trees on the rollers. I mean, it was, they're trying to duck through it, and it's a dangerous operation. I mean,
So for that, there's not anybody in the department that would be interested in doing that?
we have a tree trimmer. He's out.
No,
but
for the other
he's out,
position.
8 hours a day. They're out there doing it.
No, for the second position.
No, we don't.
You
no,
said
we don't have the
Did we
equipment.
not just
don't-
say we're
we don't-
eliminating?
We
one?
don't have another truck. They let that truck go. We're down to one bucket truck
We sold it? Or-
before my time.
I think the bucket truck position gets into the other question that I had was, we just talked about the labor since 2007. Think about the equipment since 2007, selling off a
Yeah,
bucket
yeah,
truck.
We
The
lost a
plows-
lot of vehicles.
Plows that we bought in 2007 that are still on the road, and I'm sure there's a case to be made for some of those that, as long as we can find the parts, we can keep going. But for others, we heard Tom Carney earlier today said he took I believe it was a sanitation truck was taken off the road. Any thoughts or comments to the condition of the fleet since 2007? Do you think we've treaded water? In your view, do you think it's gotten worse? Do you think we have less useful and reliable equipment than we used to have?
Equipment right now, because we didn't follow through with the plan we had set in place, the 15-year plan that was in place, that was taken out. That gave us that shortfall on vehicle replacement. So right now, we are into that, try to keep them running until we can get some new trucks in. I mean, the mechanics we have are great. They're picking stuff out of the shop, as quick as possible. But then, we're working on a piece, we just come off a paving job, this went wrong, that cylinder blew, a hose blew. You stop working on that piece, get back over and
Mhm.
get this thing, the demand and things running instantly. But it's gonna be our biggest shortfall is equipment, I mean, I gotta say, from what we started out in the spring, we did an evaluation on our trucks. You guys got the pictures of how everything was, what it looked like. Our vac trucks, previous administration, nah, we're not fixing them. We're just, put them up to auction and buy a new one. Well, vac truck's $400,000 or $500,000. We took one, totally rebuilt everything on it. The vac trucks don't do a lot of miles. It's the unit that runs itself, the vacuum part of it. There was holes rotted through everything. I think we spent like $20-some thousand to put this truck back together. That gave us an extra 10 years on that truck. I don't have to spend that money. And we got the second one in now. We're doing the same thing, relining it, refabricating, resealing, same thing. Low miles on the truck, but the back end was gone. So now it's a truck that's going to last another 10 years that we're going to save money on.
Random question on those trucks too. I've seen them before and those sit outside all year round?
No, that's what that back room is for. Summertime, we have them outside.
Okay.
Yeah, good weather, but wintertime, they're inside. They carry water. We have to we still use them in the winter to clean DIs. You get plug ups, that's what they're for. So wintertime, they do run. So we don't, I mean, we don't stop because it's wintertime doing maintenance and stuff on our drainage deals. So we're out cleaning out DIs year round. So that truck needs to stay warm inside. So we have enough. I mean, if you look at our shop in the morning before everybody leaves, it looks like a sardine can in there packed with trucks. I don't know, these guys, they're talented. They back them in, they park them, they're inches apart, the plows, when they put them in there. They got a ground man, they back them up, everything's ready for the morning. We know what truck's got to go out first, that's at the front door. So this is, the salt truck, this truck, the loaders. It's quite an operation and it's very well organized. So, and we want to keep it that way.
I have another quick question. With the loss of personnel, laborers or other staff, and the loss of not having the vehicles, how much is that combined? Are we contracting out and like using CMH to do the work? You know what I'm
Actually,
asking? Saying?
yes. That's a little different. That's out on the capital projects. I'd say on the general day-to-day operations, losing the guys is where we pull from another department in there to help another one. If we got more stump grinding to do, we send 2 stump grinders out. We got to pull somebody off the tree truck or a laborer off a ditch job. So we're sacrificing somewhere. On the outside contracting, we run the job. They assist us. The reasoning is we don't want to keep anybody on full to fill that position, having that contractor. We'd have to hire somebody, pay them year round, and we don't need them throughout the winter. You know what I mean? We don't have enough trucks for them to drive, or they're adding those extra operators. To us, we look at it as they're just temporary. It's you pay the rate, the state rate, whatever it costs to do business, but they work for us. We direct them, we tell them what to do. And they handle stuff that we normally don't do, the heavy digging, the deep stuff with the trench, with the safety trenches. You're getting into stuff where I don't think our guys are used to that. And it's a very dangerous position to put people in. These guys are better qualified to do this. And this is why we use them on these projects.
I think Councilmember Bukowski there really got to the essential question about what the budgets have actually
Yeah.
been doing over the last 15 years. Going back a little further, is that the sentiments of this board compared to previous boards have been, let's do more in-house. I can respect that and I can appreciate it, but if we're not putting the people in the highway department and we're not making the investments we need in the equipment, yes, we've got a paver, but we work with companies that give us a paver that can make one fewer passes, more efficient use of labor, and bringing the cost per lane mile down compared to using our own in all cases. We can obviously
There's
use our own,
times
but
we get their paver for nothing. We put
Mhm.
our operator on their paver. They let us use it.
Mm.
Rollers, they're out on the job anyway. They let us put a guy on
Mhm.
their roller. So it does help us in that
Right.
respect.
in our system, we have town employees act as the general contractor. As you said, we run the system ourselves and we hire out for stuff that we need. So we can go ahead and buy a truck that does the tack coat, but that's going to run us a considerable chunk of money. And like adding new equipment when we're not even keeping up the existing and reducing the employees, like if we're talking about this idea of doing more in-house, like, do we want to execute on that? Because the actions suggest we don't want to. But if we do, that's going to require, I mean, I don't see how we address that by adding dollars to the budget.
Yeah.
I mean, that's but purely adding dollars. It could be addressed by bonding equipment and get that caught up. That still means more dollars that taxpayers have to cover.
Yeah,
Um,
better equipment will reduce the cost of labor.
Mhm.
At least hold it at bay, put it that way. Where we, try not to add on if, you put somebody on another person, it's just, you got them for the year. So if we can buy better equipment to do labor saving projects, right down to lawn cutting, it's ditch cutting, it's the labor factor out there is a lot. So we're pulling guys off to do menial tasks, which some of the equipment out there would be able to do it a lot quicker, a lot faster. So we brainstorm every morning, trying to come up with better ideas to make this operation. We sit every morning, 6 guys get together and spend 15 minutes and plan a day and try to come up with ideas. Where can I help you? Where can I help you? Where can I help you? They work together. And then we take that and transfer it out to the general employees and try to, do the best we can for what we have to work with.
So earlier it was mentioned going to a second shift. Is there a cost savings there? Are you saving on lack of OT being paid out? But then
Yes.
is there a cost for shift differential?
It's minimal.
Is there a cost?
35 cents an hour. for
So there's a
shift
cost
different-
savings then
Yeah,
in the end between the two?
yes.
And then will that still address work needing to get done during first shift? Or are we spreading the same people thin now throughout the day piece during first shift?
Now, we can.
Like, are you weakening up?
Now we can do work with the second shift that we normally doing on the first shift. All it is just transfer them to a different time. So the work still gets done, and it's kind of nice because, we're out of here at 2:00. Well, we could be working, 2 to 8 out there doing other tasks other than plowing. We can be clearing bridges. We can be clearing sidewalks. So now we're working, a 16-hour day, basically over an 8-hour day.
That gonna help overtime costs?
Yes, that'll help overtime costs.
Another question here, it says TCA wage increases 6.61%. Maybe Mr. Kraus can speak on that.
Sure, that's the 2 years of TCEA wage increases. So 3.25 compounded with 3.25 is 6.61%.
On their last contract.
Based on what has
Lack
been
of-
the current market rates of the other contracts. So, that doesn't, as I state with a budget is a plan. It doesn't write it into reality, but that's the estimate right now.
But while we're on overtime, on page 50, there's the traffic control budget, and I kept that largely in place from what was requested. The one line was overtime payroll. I had some concern and also some understanding at the cost that that's growing. Do you have any comment on the pressure that's going to be on that next year? I know we have the lighting project and
The
what we
lighting
should
project,
anticipate?
it's going to become a maintenance, issue down the road once this thing's all in place. But right now, you look at the cost for the overtime. I mean, you get to the point where there's an accident at night, you got to bring the guy, it takes a
Mhm.
pole down. We got wires in the street. It's just drivers aren't getting any better. And it's, the kids texting, whatever, they're taking out more stuff than ever. So it's not that, we're wasting overtime. We're fulfilling a need throughout the town to service the damage,
Right.
and,
So if that happens and there is an accident that takes a pole out, I would imagine NYSEG or National Grid would still come out to repair those lines.
if
Is
there are line, our stuff, we're taking all of underground, all the wire in this whole project. This is ours now. We bought a big project here. So now we own the wires in the ground. We own the poles. So that's, everybody realizes what we took on here. We took on a monumental task. Now, down the road, anytime there's an accident, we're going to be responsible for putting this back together. But the savings that we had in this lighting program was very, very, very high.
Yeah, on this payroll situation, the reason I ask about it is, as you came in, the previous highway superintendent received the salary plus a $7,000 stipend.
Right.
That $7,000 stipend was removed. The request that you had in this budget, as you know, I didn't honor it in full, but I did honor it in part, and that was what I put in here. And part of it is that with taking on this lighting project, we're gonna have to make sure that we're doing that maintenance work, and it's gonna require regularly overseeing what's going on here. I'm a little worried about this overtime payroll line, and
Yeah.
I want to try to do as much of the work as we can and not to micromanage you, but as much of the work as we can within the regular working hours of the day. And I've been here nearly 7 years now, and I'm pretty confident that we can get this overtime payroll line down and to make more efficient use of that labor in this department during the day. Yeah, I know you're still kind of getting your wheels under you. I don't mean it to be an attack or a criticism. It's just my
No,
observations
I've
that,
talked to Chris and we do try to keep things in perspective throughout the day for general maintenance and where we can
Mhm.
repair something during the day. But it comes from the accidents.
Mhm.
It's very high. It's amazing how much damage is done out there. I mean, I know there's insurance claims against it. I don't know where the money, does it go back in our budget? I don't know. I can't tell you that, but I know we have, I sign off on, insurance claims, knowing that, hey, this insurance company's paying this. I don't, that's a Brian question.
and vehicle incidents have been noted in the news that there's been more of these accidents going on in 2025, especially with vehicular accidents with pedestrians. So I see that there's, an increase of that kind of thing. And there's a need to increase the line a little bit because when the wages go up, your overtime is
It's gonna go up,
1.5. So that's
yes, yep.
dollar wise, that's going to go up for the same unit of labor. So that's the reason that I cut that back from the initial request. I took 2,000 off of it. Was my thinking that, hey, I think we can work within that 20,000 and then all that to make that
Yeah.
work.
I don't think they appreciate getting woke up at midnight and say, hey, come out here and fix it. But they do. They get up and they get the job done. They get out there and make it happen. So
Yeah, it's,
that's all we can ask.
and then
And it
working
comes- and
through
it
that
comes-
figure,
It comes at a cost,
Mhm.
you know?
and working at figuring out the minimum number of folks we may need
yeah,
for a particular
yeah.
incident.
I get another year under this. I came out of this industry, so that was a plus.
Mhm.
I came out of the paving. I worked at the quarries. I made the blacktop. I understand a realm of things here. My own welding shop. I can sit down with my welder and show him things, and it works. It's nice to be well-rounded. So we solve a lot of problems that way. I work with Jeff Odo daily. He'll come to me. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? How can we fix this? How can we do this to save money? And then like every bill I sign, if there's anything on there I don't like, I question it. We had a problem with one of the dealers. We looked at, they threw this total number in for labor. We're like, hey, this something ain't right here. We went and questioned it. It was a $4,800 bill. When we got done with it, it was 1,800 because we're paying attention. We're out. They're sending us bills for with fuel surcharges on them. You want to keep doing business with us? The fuel's down. Don't yank our chain. Something we are watching.
We have any other questions, comments, concerns from board members?
Question here, it says topsoil cost has doubled in the last 5 years. Our projection for the year is 19,000 and our request is 40. Can you speak to that?
We are using using more topsoil on the projects. A lot of the reconstructions, the sidewalks, we're using it up there. I mean, it's right down to plow damage.
So next year might be double, is what you're
No,
saying?
The problem
Going
is,
from 19 to
it's the-
40?
it's
my
the
question.
cost of material going up. So we're projecting, trying to cover that so we can at least cover the projections.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Think we're all set, Mr. Rujniak?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good day.
You have a good afternoon. And with that, that's the last department head appearing in front of us. There are a couple very minor budgets that we didn't get over. There's a publicity budget of $3,500, a $6,000 budget for economic development, and there may be a few others that we didn't cover. Is there interest of the board to go into those very minor areas, or do you feel an email on those would suffice? Okay. So with that, we have, we're at about 2:45. We've got some time for closing questions, comments, and concerns. My recommendation would be that we take what we have what came over the last 2 days, and we work as quickly as we can to put together a proposed amendment package if there's desire from the board to make changes to this. So that's all I've got.
One last comment, thoughts as far as, discussing this once we do have a full board. I know work sessions can be kind of tight, but unless we schedule another special meeting, I mean, I think it'd be great to try and fit in some of these things, obviously through email, and if we could dedicate an entire work session, something like this, to this, to try and accompany everybody's schedule. I don't know what everybody's thoughts are on that, or something to think about. Take it with you and think about it.
We are meeting again on Tuesday. I would think we should speak with the attorney and the clerk and the finance director, but maybe there's an opportunity to start our meeting 1 hour early. Vote that time to this. That said, we should probably work amongst ourselves prior to Tuesday and walk into the door with, this is what we're thinking, and then spend that hour, hashing out the rest of the details.
For me personally, I think Tuesday's too early because we still have the public hearing later that day. So I mean, why even have a public hearing if we're just gonna go and make these recommendations without listening to the public piece of it? So to me, I think we're putting the cart before the horse on that. So I would say anytime after Tuesday, after we get public input, whether they email us, write us, or present before us in the podium.
Yeah, my point was not necessarily this.
No, I
Tuesday,
get that's not what you were saying, but I'm just saying if we go any
Especially
sooner than
coming up.
Tuesday,
Yeah.
to me, then I think we're not giving a fair shake to
Oh,
the public piece of it.
Yeah,
all.
I absolutely agree with that, that we don't want to vote on amendments on Tuesday night because we're only having the public hearing, but to get something sketched out that when folks come before us at 7 PM, that, we have a document that was published, or we have video discussion that they can look at, or even come to the regular meeting to ask, well, what's the basis of the changes? We can always do that at a special meeting after Tuesday. I think it accomplishes
Yeah.
the same goal as long as we publish an amendment package, whatever there may be, on regular order. That way the public has from Wednesday when we get our resolutions out until the day of the meeting to look that over and share their, call in, emails, whatever it may be.
And unfortunately, I mean, I'm just going to be realistic here. I don't think a work session of the 2 hours or even 1 hour of that 2 hour time slot we have allocated will be enough time. I think we're going to go in circles on things. I think we're going to be here, our typical sometimes. Today was very nice, peaceful, great. But unfortunately, I think this is going to be one of those items that it's going to need some time for talking, negotiating, and to work things out and hopefully iron it
Most
out
of the
in
day
a
for
calm,
that.
smooth manner. But sometimes we derail ourselves and hopefully we can stay on track though. So I think we may need some time on it.
Just one more thing before we finish up. Yesterday we were talking a little bit about the office supplies budgets for planning and zoning. I had asked for the council office clerk. I just ran into her and asked if she could check in with the chairs of our planning and zoning boards about what those lines have been used for in the past, may be used for. And the big thing that came up were name tags like this for zoning board members and business cards when needed. So those are lines that by and large we can cut because we can create a line or add to an office supply line within that part-town fund that would address. It's very rare when that comes up with a new member of that board. So we can use the office supply line that is existing in a different, maybe it's whether in the building department or housing to deal with that stuff.
One last thing on office supplies. I'd like to at least entertain the idea of somehow consolidating some of those things instead of everybody, oh, I need pencils or pens. You order it, $200 here. I'll go to Amazon for, the sewer department. I think we should seriously consider consolidating some of those things, or even, water services. Everybody has their own services for that. I think would be advantageous to try and think of some of those things throughout the town where we have multiple departments ordering the same exact things.
Water services is a good point. That's one of the areas where doing stuff in-house has saved us money, especially here in town hall. We had something on the second floor that came with a monthly charge. We bought equipment outright That's reduced our long-term costs, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So that's certainly something worth looking through. I knew when I was a private citizen before I got on the board, there was a former council member looking into the office supplies. Not exactly sure what happened there, but it seems to be, it seems it was a project that was moving along, maybe some progress was made, but it's worth talking to folks here in town that remember that project and see what the pros and cons were.
So, yeah, I mean, I myself was looking into that, but some of the obstacles and it should be done. I mean, we should be universal across the board. Got one department paying $56 for a case of paper and another department paying 41. For, order from one vendor, but then you need a
Guessing
centralized
the
purchasing is the thing, and then getting it out to the departments. So there's a lot to it.
storage.
Yeah, so where
everything's
is it gonna
gonna
be housed
sit.
if we have it all
Yeah.
on site? So there's a lot of things to it, should be done, but there's a lot of work to it, but I mean, I guess that falls into, part of it is, hey, we can't micromanage everything too, so who's gonna have that task, but if they're already spread thin too, so there's a lot to it, but without a doubt, that is an issue that's costing us money where we may be buying the same pen, but from two different vendors at a difference of 15 cents per pen, and that adds up, same with paper being another big product, toiletry, stuff like that. So there's cost savings to be done there. It's just how do we approach it and who's the lead and who's in charge of it. I mean, we've got things in place also, sake of argument, GPS systems, we're paying for them, but who's monitoring them? How are they monitored? Are we even using them? Do we even know how many we have out there? Are we paying for GPS units that we don't no longer have the vehicle for? And was it, decommissioned with the vehicle and the piece is gone and we just don't know that? Yeah, there's a lot that we need to tighten up and go with that. And it kind of goes back to a question I asked, with IT, where they do it every year, go through it and say, hey, cell phones, these are all gone. These employees are gone. Are we doing this with other items too? And I'm just saying GPS units is one because that's been on my radar since I got here. Like who monitors them? Where are they? Who has access? I don't know those answers. And I mean, I've been hearing the answers. It all comes out of the supervisor's office, but now we have a new supervisor, so things are changing there. So just things that we need to address. Cost saving.
Yes, is something that should be done. It's outside of the supervisor's office for the sake of the position. You don't want to centralize too much power with one person.
Correct.
So you want a management confidential person doing that too. Which gets to the question of something like the assistant IT director. If it's a technology, maybe that's the best place to put something like that. GPS is good in terms of liability too, because if you have somebody that says, hey, this XYZ truck came down my street and ran my mailbox over, and GPS proves that truck wasn't there at the time it happened, that protects the town against false claims. So there's a case to be made that with this assistant IT director, I didn't fund it in this budget. My goal was to fund that in 2026, but if we're thinking not just about GPS, but other things that are tech related, where somebody in that position can take care of various tasks that are management confidential related, maybe the board wants to address that question sooner.
Also, I mean, piggybacking off the assistant IT director position, with job duties that, right now we just can't keep dumping more and more tasks on the IT department because they're overwhelmed. I mean, they're constantly expanding with IT and with the changes in IT and everything. Where an IT director, maybe like you said, the GPS units, maybe that's a task. The website, maybe that's a task. Right now, they're spread out to different offices just because it was under the supervisor's office at one point. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, you took the website because you were already working on it while you were in the supervisor's office, and now you're kind of just stuck with it, right? Yeah. So and you can't offload it to IT because they're already, barely above water with all the changes in communications and equipment that we're doing too, and all that stuff. So.
Right, and I know yesterday, I was condescendingly asked what the three people in the supervisor's office do, but one of the things we do is time clocks. So if we're reducing from 2 full-time people to a full-time and a part-time, that's one of those things that maybe the time clock portion goes into the IT department if the staffing is adequate. If it isn't, this is entering new people into the system and getting rid of people that aren't. And this is one of the ways that the supervisor's office has saved money this year. Is we've gone through and people that were in the time clock system per entry has cost the town some money. We were able to wipe people out that should have been wiped out in the past. That was maintained pretty well, but we were able to save a few bucks here and there. And like you said, the cost of a pen, they all add up. The cost of extra people with email accounts or with cell phones or any of this stuff, Microsoft 365 subscriptions, all those things add up. if somebody doesn't need it, maybe they shouldn't have it, you know? So with that, I will, make a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?